a group of men, cloaked in the robes of faith, rise from the ashes of war-torn Afghanistan, promising purity, justice, and a return to true Islamic values. But what if I told you that behind their pious words lies a calculated machine of control, where religion isn't a path to peace but a sharpened blade wielded to dominate, oppress, and terrorize? What dark secrets have they buried under layers of scripture, and how have they twisted the very soul of Islam to build an empire of fear? Stick around, because today, we're re-peeling back the veil on how the Taliban used religion as a weapon, the truth exposed like never before. You'll feel the weight of history, the sting of betrayal, and the urgent call for awareness that could change how you see the world forever. Let's dive right in, starting with the roots that grew into this thorny reality. Picture Afghanistan in the late 1970s and early 1980s, a land ravaged by Soviet invasion, where chaos reigned and people yearned for stability. Enter the Taliban, emerging from madrasas in Pakistan, fueled by a strict interpretation of Deobandi Islam, mixed with Pashtun tribal codes. But was this a genuine revival of faith, or a strategic ploy? Historians reveal that the Taliban didn't just stumble upon power. They were engineered, in part, by external forces like Pakistan's ISI and Saudi funding, who saw in them a proxy to counter Soviet influence. Yet, the Taliban branded themselves as holy warriors, claiming divine mandate to purify society. This wasn't innocent zeal. It was the first strike in weaponizing religion, turning verses from the Quran into rallying cries for recruitment and control. How could a movement born from resistance morph into a regime that bans music, destroys ancient Buddhas, and enforces beheadings, all under the banner of God's will? The answer lies in their selective scripture twisting, where mercy is forgotten and judgment becomes a tool for tyranny. Fast forward to 1994, when the Taliban swept through Afghanistan like a desert storm, capturing Kandahar and promising to end the civil war's horrors. They preached Sharia law as the ultimate salvation, but let's uncover the manipulation. Taliban leaders, like Mullah Omar, declared themselves as Amir al-Mu'minin, the commander of the faithful, a title echoing early Islamic caliphs, but used here to legitimize absolute rule. Critics, including Muslim scholars worldwide, argued this was a blatant distortion. For instance, Olivier Roy, a French scholar, points out that the Taliban aren't purely religious. They're a militant political group cloaking ambitions in Islamic garb. Imagine the emotional toll on ordinary Afghans. Families torn apart, hoping for peace, only to find their faith hijacked. One survivor's story haunts me, a young girl in Kabul who watched her father executed for un-Islamic behavior, like owning a radio. Her tears weren't just for loss. They were for the betrayal of a religion meant to uplift, now used to crush spirits. How many more such stories remain untold, fueling a cycle of despair that keeps viewers glued, wondering if redemption is possible? Delving deeper into their ideology, the Taliban's version of Islam is a Frankenstein's masterpiece, from Deobandi teachings, Wahhabi influences, and local customs, but animated by power hunger. They enforce hudud punishments, like stoning for adultery or amputation for theft, claiming Quranic authority, but Islamic experts, such as those from Al-Azhar University, condemn this as selective extremism, ignoring the Quran's emphasis on compassion and context. Take the ban on women's education. Taliban spokesmen cite protection under Islam, but scholars like Hassan Abbas, in his book, The Return of the Taliban, expose it as a control mechanism, not divine decree. Emotionally, picture mothers whispering prayers for their daughters' futures, only to see dreams shattered by fire. This isn't faith, it's fear-mongering, where religion becomes a whip to subjugate half the population, and the curiosity builds. Why do they target women so viciously? Is it insecurity, cultural baggage, or a deliberate strategy to maintain patriarchal dominance? As we explore, you'll feel the rage bubbling. How dare they tarnish a global faith with such cruelty? Now, let's expose the political weaponization. The Taliban didn't just rule. They exported their twisted theology, influencing groups like Taliban Pakistan and even ISIS. They use jihad as a recruitment lure, promising paradise for fighters. But reports from the Council on Foreign Relations show it's often about territorial gain. In Afghanistan, they reframed nationalism as Islamic nationalism, per the Middle East Institute, blending faith with ethnicity to unify Pashtuns while marginalizing others like Hazaras. This religious facade hides ethnic cleansing attacks on Shia minorities justified as purging infidels. Heart-wrenching accounts from survivors, like those in Human Rights Watch reports, describe villages burned, families slaughtered, all in God's name. Can you imagine the terror of hearing mosque loudspeakers blare execution announcements, turning places of worship into theaters of horror? This emotional manipulation keeps their grip tight, but it also sows seeds of doubt among followers, leading to internal fractures we rarely hear about. Criticisms from within the Muslim world add layers to this exposure. Afghan religious scholars, as reported by PBS, have openly rebelled against the Taliban's education bans, calling them un-Islamic. Even conservative nations like Saudi Arabia criticize their harsh Sharia interpretations. The U.S. State Department's Religious Freedom reports highlight how the Taliban erase minorized minorities, Christians, Baha'is, and atheists face death for apostasy. This isn't protection of faith, it's manipulation. Emotionally, think of hidden Christians praying in secret, their Bibles buried like forbidden treasures. The Taliban's vice and virtue squads patrol streets, enforcing dress codes with whips, turning religion into a surveillance state. How does this square with Islam's teachings on free will? It doesn't, it's a perversion, as noted by the German Marshall Fund, where radical mullahs brainwash youth, creating generations of extremists. The global ripple effects are chilling. The Taliban's model inspires copycats, from Boko Haram in Nigeria to insurgents in Mali, all using religion as a weapon for insurgency. In Afghanistan, UN reports show 90% of families skipping meals, yet Taliban divert aid to militants. This hypocrisy fuels poverty, with women punished for begging. Imagine the despair of a widow lashed for seeking food. Curiosity piques. How do they sleep at night, preaching piety, while starving their people? And the international community, often complicit, sending funds without accountability, as exposed in Washington Institute, analyzes. But let's not forget the human cost, the stories that make this real. Recall Malala Yousafzai shot for advocating education. Her survival screams defiance against Taliban tyranny, or the Bamiyan Buddha's destruction in 2001, justified as idol smashing, erasing cultural heritage in faith's name. These acts aren't isolated. They're systematic. As per Yale University Press, discussions on bandism. Emotionally, it's gut-wrenching. Artists silenced, musicians beaten, a nation muted. Yet, resilience shines underground schools, secret radios, whispers of hope defying the darkness. As we near the truth's core, consider the Taliban's return in 2021. They promised moderation, but edicts piled up. No women in public without guardians, no music, no dissent. The Washington Post's investigations reveal a regime re-engineering society for Islamic control, but it's power consolidation. Muslim intellectuals, per DW News, criticize this as tacit approval of extremism. The emotional curiosity, will the world intervene, or let history repeat? Wrapping this revelation, the Taliban's weaponization of religion isn't just Afghan tragedy, it's a global warning. By twisting Islam, they've created a blueprint for oppression, but exposure breeds change. Feel the urgency, the pain of the oppressed. That's the power of truth. If this eye-opening expose on Taliban manipulation shocked you, hit like and subscribe now for more hard-hitting truths. For next video, visit to the channel.